Welcome to Beauty and the Biz. Discover how to grow your practice with effective cosmetic patient attraction, conversion, and retention advice from author, speaker, trainer, and cosmetic practice business and marketing coach, Catherine Maley, MBA.
Hello, and welcome to Beauty and the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of the cosmetic practice. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to cosmetic practices to get them more patients and more profits. And I thought I would just give you a quick update on what's happening in Sausalito, California. This time of year, it's gorgeous because the tourists aren't here yet, which we like because the traffic's already pretty bad. And the skies are clear, the helicopters are going. I highly recommend a helicopter ride, by the way, if you ever visit Sausalito. It's a really great way to see a whole bunch of it within like 30 minutes, and the real estate is crazy. You can see the huge villas by the water, and it's just lovely. However, this time of year, this has been awful for my allergies. As I get older, as if I didn't have enough to worry about with my vanity issues, I now have allergies. And I went to 3 different doctors who kept telling me they were allergies. And I said, how can that be true? I mean, I'm dying here. I can't breathe. My eyes are popping out of my head. They're so itchy and scratchy. I can't wear makeup. They're red and swollen, and they hurt, then they're itchy, then they hurt, then they're itchy. It's been awful. And all 3 keep saying allergies. And then they just give me ridiculous prescriptions for eye drops that are $280, and then some ointment that's another $80. And nothing's helping enough. So I talked to one of my surgeon friends, and he told me about pure, unfiltered honey. Eat a teaspoon of that a day for 2 weeks and it'll be gone. So I'm trying that next, but this is out of control. Anyway, I hope things are okay with you on your end. So today's episode is called How to Fix Your Follow-Up and Do More Procedures. And this one is near and dear to my heart because so many of you are playing the internet marketing game, which you have to. But so this podcast is for you if most of your leads are coming from the internet. And if you want better conversion rates, you've got to figure out a way to make that happen because you've got to be tired of wasting time on consultations that don't book. And then if you're not sure if your staff is following up on leads, that's always a big one too. When I say to the surgeons, so, tell me about your lead generation process, they're like, well, I think the people are calling and following up. I'm not sure. And then if you're just looking for a rock solid plan to follow up, this is what this podcast is for. And it's going to be following up for these 2 specific areas that lose the most money. And that is the prospective patients who call you, but then don't book an appointment, or who complete a consultation, but then they don't convert. And you're like, what happened? But so let's back up. You have spent a fortune redesigning your website. I mean, these websites are $10,000 to $50,000. And it's really important to do that. It's part of your branding. It's a good investment to make. But it's not just that. It's the hosting, which is another, $1,000 or $2,000. It's the SEO, which is another, $2,000 to $5,000. It's all that content marketing you have to do nowadays, which can be anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 plus your social media efforts and the staff you might have to bring on board. That could be another $1,000 to $3,000. I mean, a lot goes into this. And I'm not even talking about the pay to play, Google AdWords process. Geez, if you're playing that game, you're throwing an awful lot of money at advertising, with the banner ads. And what I ask is, okay, so you're spending all of this money on advertising. So what's happening? What happens? And the surgeon usually looks at me like, I am not exactly sure, but I just know who I see, but I don't know anything else going on behind the scenes. So let's all remember, leads are still only one part of it. You can get a lead, but that lead has to somehow get through your host system. So they have to get past your receptionist. They have to show up. They have to have a great consult with you. They have to meet with your consultant. And then they've got to say yes. If they don't, all of that is just wasted effort and time and money. So here's some stats that I think you might find very interesting. 48% of practices never follow up. 48%. The average first follow-up is 72 hours later. 72 hours later. In the internet world, that's like, 72 years. Only 25% of practices make 2 contact attempts. And then 64% of practices don't have an organized way to follow up on a lead. So how crazy is that to spend all of that money on all of this marketing and advertising to get that lead, yet not spend any time, money, or effort trying to convert that lead? Because here's the reality. It doesn't matter if you're ranked on the first page of Google if you can't convert the leads to cash paying procedures. Everything I do nowadays, I call it patient attraction and conversion, like with the "and" being capitals. You can't just attract, you've got to attract and convert. I can't be any more clear about that. So then when I talk to the practices, especially when I'm consulting, I say to them, okay, so what's the problem? Why are you having so much trouble with lead gen follow-up? And so I often hear things like, we get too many leads. They're poor quality. They're just price shoppers. They're not asking anything important. It's just crappy leads. Or the staff doesn't know what to say, or they don't have a concise plan. Or they've also said, it's not a big deal here. It's not required. Really? They also don't want to appear salesy, and I can understand that. And that's because they're not doing it correctly. They're also afraid of rejection, and that's probably the big one. Nobody wants to be rejected, and nobody wants to feel like they're making phone calls and they're like pushing and they feel like they're having to sell harder than they should have to. But in today's world, you have to do everything possible that you can to make this happen for you. And another one is there's just no commitment to excellence. And that's the bigger one, because the leader is you. You run your practice, you own the practice. And I'll go into leadership modules down the road for sure, because I definitely want to talk a lot about leadership. But if you don't demand excellence from your staff and give them precise how-tos, they are going to do the minimal amount of effort needed to keep their job. And that's just the way how human beings are. So here's what I'm thinking. This is absolutely your opportunity to dominate your marketplace in your area, because most practices are not good at follow-up. They don't have any system. They don't have a process. They're not set up for it. It's not a priority because they're not thinking of that. They're only thinking of the lead generation part of it. And so you could really kick some butt if you get good at all of the fundamentals, because here's what actually ends up happening. There are the easy leads, and everybody loves the easy leads because they're so easy. They're like your low-hanging fruit. They're your laydowns. They're the ones who call who don't even need to know anything. They already think you're fantastic. They already probably came referred from a girlfriend. Those are the easy leads. The tougher leads are the ones who don't know you from Adam. They only found you on the internet. They only know you about your website. They don't know anything about you. Those are much tougher. And frankly, those are the majority of them. If you're throwing money at the internet, I call them internet stranger patients. You've got to try a lot harder to convert them because you're not the only game in town. When they're on the internet, they saw you and they saw every one of your competitors. So they're clicking like crazy all over the place, trying to figure out who to go to, what they want done. So they're already a confused patient. So that is the majority, though. That's why you've got to help them get to the end with you rather than somebody else. So is it really a dead lead? You have to really look at that. Is it a dead lead, or is there something else we could have done about it? Because here's the reality of life, and we can all vouch for this. People change, moods change, circumstances change. You just never know. By the way, in my book, I asked them, how long had you been thinking about cosmetic rejuvenation before you actually acted on it? And when it's surgical, it was years. When it was minimally invasive, it was more about months. But even then, that could have taken years too. when somebody finally is ready to do something and they literally show you a sign by they waved at you, or at least they raised their hand by asking you a question on the internet, filling out one of your opt-in forms on your website, they picked up the phone and called you, or they DM'd you in social media, that is about as good of an internet lead as you can get. They literally raised their hand and said, I'm interested in talking to you. Maybe a little, maybe a lot. I don't know yet, but I am definitely, throwing my hat in the ring. That's when you have to do everything humanly possible to get them on your side and through your process. Because here's a big belief buster. You're quitting way too soon on these leads. I hear it constantly. Oh, these are crappy leads. Well, it could actually be your crappy process, honestly. I mean, without cutting anyone down, it could be that more than what it is. If your staff thinks all these leads are crappy, guess what they are? Crappy. If your staff really ups their game and realizes, I see, they're only crappy leads because we haven't done enough for them to become warm leads. Right now, they are really kind of coldish warm leads. Our goal is to get them to be warm and hot leads. So please don't believe dead leads are dead. Dead leads, there's plenty of money to be made in dead leads. You just need some strategies. And here's something you're going to be surprised at. It really does take up to 8 or more follow-up attempts to get someone's attention in order for them to actually interact with you. And it's not for the faint of heart, because that takes some courage to stick with it when somebody's not interacting back. For example, your staff is calling them and they're not calling back. Your staff is DMing them back and they're not responding anymore. Your staff is emailing them back and they're ignoring it. Trust me on this one. There's a chance they might be ignoring you for a reason, because the timing's off now, something went wrong, the money ran away, but now it's going to come back pretty soon, so they'll be back soon. You never know, because just because they're not interacting doesn't mean they're not listening and watching and hearing the calls, watching the DMs. There's a really good chance they're still with you. They're just not overtly interacting with you at the moment. So never give up. Just keep at it, but you need a system to do that. Because this is so interesting. The probability of you making more contacts as you go, there's a much better, let me put it this way. The more calls you make, the more probability you have of interacting with them. Because at first they might be just, holding off. Then they might be a little aggravated. Then they will respect you because you're still at it when everyone else quit. It's just a weird human thing that we have. If we can get past our own selves, we can often make a really good friend out of this person by our persistence. But the chances of you constantly making those calls or staying in touch dramatically decreases just when they were ready to interact. You stop, is what ends up happening. So that's, why that happens? Because you're letting emotions get into it. So if you want to talk emotional, let's talk about how you're going to feel emotionally when you lose all of these profits that you are losing because you're not following up. Now, I'm going to throw in some numbers here, and I hope this works without a visual, but think about it this way. You get 100 leads a month. And for some practices, that's nothing. For some practices, they're getting hundreds and hundreds of leads. But let's just keep the math easy. You're getting 100 leads a month, and you're able to convert. Your receptionist converts 45 of them, which is terrific, but you still have 55 that didn't convert from a call to a booked consultation. Well, if you multiply that out and I come up with some ideas to convert 15% more of those, well, 15% of 55, once they're followed up with, is an extra 8 booked consultations. Do you realize when you multiply that out, that's 96 more consults a year just because you followed up? Not bad. So now let's talk about those who booked, but they booked a consultation, but they didn't book surgery. So let's say you had 100 consultations per month and your coordinator is able to convert 40 of them. And you know what? It depends. It's good, that's bad. That's another discussion. It depends on what was the procedure and the demographic. But let's say they were able to convert 40. And you think that's fantastic. 40 actually converted to surgery. But that's not true because 60 did not convert. 60 is a much bigger number than 40. And again, if we use some strategies and we're able to increase the 60 by 15%, that's an extra 9 surgeries that now converted. So if you want to do the math on that one, let's say it's $8,000 is your average surgical price. I don't know what it is, but let's just go with $8,000. That's an extra $72,000 a month times 12. Do you realize we are talking about $864,000 in gained revenues when you actually get good at following up? So let me give you a couple of ideas, and I can't go into the whole thing. Actually, I have a whole training on this, but I also have a whole platform on this. So if you're interested, I'm happy to talk to you about it. So let me just give you a few pointers on this episode. Use different communication channels. Do you know in today's world, we've got the millennials who would never think of picking up a phone to make a phone call to save their lives. So we've got that group. We've got the people who are really old school and they love email and they like email. They keep up with it. They check it all the time. Quite frankly, the stats show that email is still working better than anything else. It just feels like it's old school, but we all still use it constantly. And then a lot of people are texting now or DMing. So you have to be where everybody is. And that means get good at the technology and using different communication channels. Now, another strategy is to collapse time. Time is never good in the follow-up process. The more time that goes by without you interacting, the colder that lead gets. And that's when it just kind of floats away because it's long forgotten. So you want to collapse time using technology. Quite frankly, in today's world, I would have a practice cell phone and I would have that thing notifying you, dinging you and pinging you and letting you know immediately whenever something's happening, whenever somebody DM'd you, texted you, emailed you, checked out your website and sent you an inquiry, any of that, you should be notified immediately within boundaries. In some practices, they do have the phone go home at night with different staff people, and then they have boundaries, like they only answer up until 10, let's say, and they start again at 8 in the morning because it is the public and some of them are up all night and God knows what they're all doing. So you do want to have some parameters so you still have a life, but nothing's more important in today's world because, you know, the first one to follow up usually wins. So use the technology as you can. Now, here's another strategy. You know how you set up protocols in surgery where you always do the same thing every single time, no matter what? And that's good for patient safety. Well, same thing here. This is good for your profits. Set up a protocol for following up. And I mean an explicit protocol. For example, the prospect calls you. The next step is the caller and the receptionist book the consultation. The next step is a pre-consultation call is made. That's for another episode. 3 days later, you send them an email or text reminder. 1 day before their consult, you email or text them. Then they come for their consult or they don't. If they don't, what else are you going to, how are you going to fix that? If they do come for their consult and they don't book, you have a protocol for that. Immediately, a thank you note goes out. Immediately, an email goes out. The next day, something else happens. Day 6, something else happens. Day 8. Do you know what I mean? Now you definitely have a protocol and it includes calling, texting, emailing, and it's not 2 times. It's more like double-digit times. Now, another strategy is to get creative with your scripts. The last thing you want to do is sound like everybody else. You lose the words follow up. I'm just calling, and you lose the word just. I'm just calling because I had nothing better to do. So I'm just calling to see if you're ready to move forward, or I just wanted to follow up to see how you're doing. If you have any more questions, The problem with that is it's so vanilla and it's so expected that it's not going to make any impact at all. Here's a better way to do it. When somebody has called you, but then they didn't book, you give them a minute, they opt in on your website, ask you a question. You call back, but here's what you do. Your staff person sits up straight, uses their voice, has confidence, and literally says something like, "Hello, this is Sue with Dr. Great's office. I'm calling you back about your recent inquiry and wanted to thank you for choosing us. Now, are you ready to book your consultation with us, or did you have a question?" Now, isn't that nice? It's forceful. It's a little assuming, and that's the point. You're assuming, of course, they want to book with you. You're the best. And you go right for it. You're not going to mill around with letting them control the call. You're going to control the call. And how do you do that? You do it with questions. Are you ready to book your consult with us, or did you have a question? One or the other. By the way, I always say, or did you have a question? And I'll tell you why. That's psychological. You don't want them to have 20 questions. That's for the consultation. You want to answer one question, which is the most important one they have. And then the next question is yours, which is, when can we see you? Just saying. Now, when somebody, the tougher ones are when they came in for a consult, and then what happens? They say, "I got to think about this," or "I need to speak with my husband." Tough one, right? Because now you're thinking, "Oh, now what am I going to do?" Well, here's a thought. The coordinator has to listen carefully and watch carefully when something goes wrong during the consultation. You can typically feel the energy drop, or you can see it in their face when something has gone awry with something you have told them. Like, for example, let's say they said, "Well, how long am I going to need to be down for a tummy tuck?" And you say, "Well, you're pretty much going to be, off your feet for 2 weeks." And you can see them like, "Oh God, 2 weeks. What the heck? What am I going to do? I don't have anybody to watch me for 2 weeks. Everyone I know works, and they start thinking like that. Your best bet is for the coordinator to catch that. And then when they say, "I don't know, I've got to think about all of this. It's a big deal." Your coordinator says, "No problem. Let me give you a call back in a couple days at the same time," and get it on the schedule, by the way. "I'm going to go ahead and call you back on Thursday at 2:00, same time, and I can check in with you then." All right? So here's what they're going to do when they check in. "Hello, Sarah. It's Karen with Dr. Smith's office. Now, I did speak with our aftercare nursing service, and they're definitely available to care for you next month if you wanted to go ahead with the surgery. I just need to let them know as soon as possible. How does that sound?" So do you see what you did? Instead of saying, "I'm just calling to follow up," you said, "I remember there was an issue," or you don't say it to her. "I remember there was an issue that you don't have anybody." You say, "I wanted to let you know something important that will help you move forward." That's the whole secret to following up, is you're not following up. You are giving them you're looking for their feedback, but you're also giving them some important information that will help them go to the next step, right? I hope I'm making that clear. So follow up on incoming leads is super serious business, and there's a ton of money to be made in dead leads. There really is, if you just do a couple of those things I showed you. And somebody has to follow up. If it's not you, it could be my team. It's called fixyourfollowupnow.com. Check it out. But seriously, it is too competitive in today's world, and lead conversion just is going to continue to decrease because of all the competition. So rise above your competitors and get good at these fundamentals. And this is a big one. Following up is a big one. So fixyourfollowupnow.com. I hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe and share this with your teammates or with your colleagues. And I really look forward to your comments and questions. Tell me, how have you managed to follow up, and how do you do it successfully, and what tips do you have? And then you can always follow me on Instagram. It's Catherine Maley, MBA. Okay, that's it for now. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
We hope you found valuable insight on this episode of Beauty and the Biz. For more episodes, tools, and Catherine's free book, visit www.catherinemaley.com. That's www.catherinemaley.com. And be sure to subscribe to get the latest practice building strategies delivered to you. And don't forget to share this Beauty in the Biz podcast with your staff and colleagues.